Each and every Wednesday, we are here to discuss our rest of season top 150, how those rankings play into the season-long trade market, our redraft trade calculator, buy lows, sell highs, and more. Be sure to stay tuned until the end. We will answer some listener questions, and we will each submit our 2 moves to make this week. All right, Mark, let's start with some injury fallout. And there's been a lot of kind of weird, uncertain timetables, rumors about injuries. I want to hit on some of that here at the top. First one is Broncos running back situation. So J.K. Dobbins goes down on a hip drop tackle, comes back into the game. I thought he was fine. And then similarly, I thought Bucky Irving was fine when he got tackled in that game and came back. And then after the game, they announced it's a foot injury. We haven't seen Bucky since. Now, Bucky also had a shoulder injury to go with it, but the foot definitely kept him out for a little bit there as well. There are a lot of rumors out there right now, Mark, and these have been substantiated not just by internet trolls and Broncos fan accounts. Like, I saw somebody say they play Xbox with J.K. Dobbins, and he told him that it's not good or something like that. I don't care about that. But Chris Thomason, who's been doing this a long time, he did say that the Broncos are at least considering IR for J.K. Dobbins. They're hoping to get good news here at some point. We are recording this Wednesday around 3 p.m. Eastern. There could be news at any time on Dobbins. So, Mark, what do you think about handling this Broncos running back situation right now?
We'll note too, the Broncos have a bye in week 12. So we're coming up on week 11 here, and the Broncos get the Chiefs this week. And then after their bye, they get the Commanders and the Raiders. So if J.K. Dobbins is an IR candidate, that means he would miss those 2 games. And those would be amazing matchups for RJ Harvey. But in the meantime, RJ Harvey so far this season has averaged 7.5 touches per game, and J.K. Dobbins is up at 16.4 touches per game. So certainly if Dobbins misses time, I think a majority of those touches would go RJ Harvey's way, probably up towards the 15-16 range, I think is fair. But historically, we've seen Sean Payton still mix in other backs. They do have Tyler Bidet there. They also have Jaleel McLaughlin, who's been inactive most of the season. But, Sean Payton felt comfortable enough playing him last year in a 3-way running back by committee. So I don't necessarily think RJ Harvey will, go up to like 80% of the snaps and get all the running back touches here. But I do think there's a good shot for him to double his touch count week in and week out, as long as Dobbins is out here. So, we bumped up RJ Harvey up to running back 16. If this Dobbins news goes sour and he is placed on IR, I mentioned a couple strong matchups coming up here for RJ Harvey past the bye. So, certainly wheels up for him there.
I think it's worth being aggressive on RJ Harvey. I'm worried about J.K. Dobbins here, just based on all the smoke, what he tweeted about stop the MFing hip drop or something like that. I don't know. He seemed quite angry. And so I like being aggressive on RJ Harvey here. Mark mentioned the matchups. Already thought he was going to be a really good player in the NFL. And what we've seen is RJ Harvey get a bunch of targets, even though he is not playing the pass down role. In other words, I don't think he's going to play on pass downs. I think Bidet and McLaughlin will stay in that kind of change of pace, 2-minute drill kind of role. And Harvey in base, but he can catch a lot of balls out of base playing in this Sean Payton offense. So I like being really aggressive on RJ Harvey. I kind of wanted my move to make, and it's not going to be it, is to buy RJ Harvey as like, there might be people out there in your league who don't know about this Dobbins situation. And even if they do, they might be skeptical about some of the other guys. I like being aggressive buying on RJ Harvey here right now.
This is a spot too. J.K. Dobbins is on a 1-year deal and obviously has a long injury history. So there are runouts too. Like if he's not fully healthy down the stretch, they just lean into RJ Harvey more, who they obviously invested a 2nd-round pick in this year. So I think multiple outs just with this Dobbins injury for Harvey to potentially take over even more work down the stretch if Dobbins did come back during the regular season.
Exactly. There's always some like toothpaste out of the tube element with these rookies, and we'll talk about Travion Henderson more here in a second.
The waiver wire is also just completely bare in high-stake leagues in FFC, FFPC. So I would definitely be aggressive with whatever you have left on Bidet and Jaleel McLaughlin too, just because we could get the rug pulled out from under us quite easily with Sean Payton.
All right, Daigle, let's go to Bucs running back situation. We have confirmed that Bucky Irving is alive. Yes, there was a picture. It was a blurry picture, but there was a blurry picture of Bucky Irving posted by Bucs beat reporters here today. He was at practice taking some handoffs from Baker Mayfield. Sounded like it was merely a walkthrough. But It sounds like he's getting close. And the Bucs have been underwhelmed, and I think rightfully so. Like, Rachaad White is a role player. He is not a workhorse back, and they kind of found that out, started going to more Sean Tucker here. So we're up at 55 overall on Bucky Irving, down to 102 on Rashad, 146 on Sean Tucker. Daigle, what do you think about Bucs getting Bucky back? Maybe.
Ultimately comes down to, as you said, when Bucky Irving returns. As far as I'm concerned, that photo today was AI until the Bucs coaching staff proves me otherwise. And so I think it's at least a good spot to continue holding both Rachaad White, Sean Tucker, since he should have been picked up over the bye week, understanding that we still had no hard news on Bucky Irving. It's also a great matchup for both Tucker and Rachaad White if Bucky stays out. The Bills, as we know, are top 4 and 5, 10, 20-yard runs allowed as they continue to struggle to stop opposing running offenses, Devon Achane included. So you can have Tucker and White ready to go, ready to start this week in the interim. I think if I have Bucky Irving, it's a hold. We've waited this long. I'm not going to sell him for less than he's worth if we assume he's coming back in the next couple of games.
I think it's a risk worth taking. There's risk he's not going to be himself. There's risk that he is going to aggravate. I think it is a risk worth taking to be a buyer on Bucky Irving right now. This schedule down the stretch, they are going to face, and Daigle mentioned the Bills matchup this week. Then they play Rams. But after that, home against Cardinals, home against Saints, home against Falcons, at Panthers, at Dolphins to end the fantasy season. And so if Bucky can get ramped up to where he was last year from a workload and efficiency perspective, I mean, I think we could be too low here at 55 overall. I mean, Bucky could be a really, really good asset to have here down the stretch. And he'll be fresh, like Rachaad White seems to be wearing down. Bucky should come back pretty fresh here. So yeah, actually, now that I'm looking at it, I kind of think we should be a little bit higher here on Bucky in the rest of the season, top 150. Assuming that big fit picture is real, as Daigle said. AI would not be all blurry like that, Daigle. AI is crystal clear in 4K. That was blurry Bigfoot. It was.
He would have 8 fingers. I need to double check that photo.
He was out there. All right, Jack. Shocking news. I don't want to say shocking. Surprising news out of Cincy yesterday as Joe Burrow's practice window was open. Now, may not be back until week 13, week 14, may not be back at all if they lose these next 3 games. And these next 3 games are not easy for Joe Flacco and the Bengals to go out there and win. So this is a tough situation. We still only have 3 Bengals ranked in the top 150, but they are very high. Jamar Chase, 4 overall. Chase Brown, 38 overall. T. Higgins, 41 overall. I think, it was pretty clear yesterday, if Joe Burrow was on waivers and you had needed quarterback help, clear ad to take a risk here, I think. But Jack, what do you think about Bengals possibly with Burrow down the stretch?
Yeah, like you said, it sounds like a very volatile situation that's pretty dependent on the next 3 weeks. Burrow himself said in a press conference, we'll see how these next couple weeks go. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of variables you have to consider, which basically sounds like if we're in the playoff hunt, I'm going to come back as soon as possible. And if not, we'll decide what to do from there. They get the Steelers, Ravens, and Patriots next 3 games, so definitely not easy. I think if you have Jamar Chase, Chase Brown, T. Higgins, obviously you want Burrow to come back. I mean, that seems pretty clear. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. If he comes back, it's a big boost for all Bengals. Flacco has proven pretty capable of sustaining these guys. I mean, in his last game, he threw for 470 yards and 4 touchdowns. So it's not like these guys are dead on arrival. I mean, we have Chase up at 4th overall. And that's a lot. That's assuming that he's going to have Flacco for at least half of the remaining fantasy season. But I do think you have to root for the Bengals basically to win 1, ideally 2 of these next 3 games, which seems like a pretty tall task given the matchups. But I think it's pretty much a wait and see at this point.
Yeah, and no Trey Hendrickson again for the Bengals this week, going to make it even tougher on that wretched defense. Yeah, I mean, Joe Flacco hasn't just kept these guys afloat. Joe Flacco has been fantasy's #1 quarterback over the last 3 weeks since he's been starting for the Bengals. So, I mean, he's absolutely shredding. Now, it's going to be tougher for him here at Steelers versus Patriots, at Ravens, at Bills. If Burrow does come back, he gets week 16 at Miami, week 17 home against the Cardinals. And so like those Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trey McBride starts in best ball, of which I have a decent amount of, I would love for Burrow to get back there and turn that game into a pure shootout there in week 17. So yeah, I'm not sure it's like a huge actionable stuff, but definitely super interesting on the Bengals right now. Mark, let's go to Jaguars. So disappointing news out of Jacksonville yesterday. As Silva and I were actually recording the team by team, news broke that Travis Hunter would be out for the entire season. Meanwhile, Brian Thomas, who he had a high ankle sprain. I mean, we need like a law that says you can't say someone has a high ankle sprain if they're going to be back in a week. That is not a high ankle sprain. Nevertheless, sounds like BTJ has a chance to be back this week. Travis Hunter is done. Mark, what do you think about Jaguars wide receivers rest of the way?
I'll start with Parker Washington here. We bumped him up quite a bit this week after his third straight game of over 20% target share, and that's in games that Parker Washington has run 80+% of the routes this season. He has a 7% share, and then 21%, 27%, and 29% target shares. So I think Parker Washington, there's a chance that he could even have a higher rest of season value than Brian Thomas Jr. at this point, but still clinging a little bit to priors on BTJ and that talent. But certainly I think Parker Washington, if you're able to get him off waivers, is a great start and a potential buy high here down the stretch. Also wanted to mention that Brenton Strange, his practice window opened today coming off IR, and the Jaguars have one of our better tight end schedules in the fantasy playoffs. So I think if you're looking for some tight end help, he could be a potential interesting stash for down the stretch. We saw in this most recent game against Houston, they kind of cut out De'Ami Brown from the top 3 rotation and had Tim Patrick out there as a wide receiver too, as Jacoby Myers was kind of eased in his first week. Jacoby Myers only 48% of routes and did not play on like the final possession when the Jaguars were trying to get into field goal range to, take that lead back after blowing a big one there. So I think Parker Washington and Brenton Strange are interesting ads here. And then Jacoby Myers, not really sure what's going to happen with him down the stretch and how long it'll take him to get integrated into this offense.
I mean, Parker Washington has been made some incredible catches for this team. I think he's going to get to play the slot a lot. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good spot for Parker Washington. I like where we have him here, 79 overall, Brian Thomas 74, and Jacoby 87. I do think Jacoby's role will grow as he learns the system more. Like they will eventually get him up towards 70%, 75% of the routes here, I think. Reminder, this show is brought to you by our friends at DraftKings. The NFL season is here. There's no better way to get closer to the action than with the DraftKings Daily Fantasy, the ultimate destination for football fans. Right now, our partners at DK are giving new customers a chance to play free for their share of millions in prizes with their first deposit on the app. Download the DK app and enter promo code ETR or scan the QR code to play free for your share of millions. That's for new DraftKings customers. Just download the Daily Fantasy app for your free shot today. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. Minimum $5 deposit required. One single use $3 ticket rewarded. Ticket rewards are site credits valid for use on eligible DraftKings contests. Ticket rewards expire 14 days after being issued. Ends on December 31st at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. See terms at DraftKings.com/promotions. Sponsored by DraftKings. All right, Daigle. Let's go to a couple messy situations here. We'll start with the Minnesota Vikings. On one hand, they have an incredible schedule the rest of the way for quarterback and wide receiver. On the other hand, JJ McCarthy we've seen 4 games of JJ McCarthy. I've been impressed with him for 1 quarter out of those 4 games.
It's high.
And Justin Jefferson, he didn't play a good game, right? I get that he fell down, he drew, whatever. He's clearly frustrated. Addison and Jefferson's catch rate was anemic against the Ravens. Now, Ravens defense has been playing better. You are going to get some much better matchups here coming up. So this is a tough situation. I think you can make a case if you want to make a case to me to buy on Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, I wouldn't be that opposed to it. At the same time, if you want to tell me JJ McCarthy is dust and I don't want Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison at these prices, I might be able to agree with you there too. So Daigle, where do you come in on Vikings rest of season, given the schedule and JJ McCarthy's play?
I'm more in the camp of starting Justin Jefferson every week and hating myself. The good news is that at least last week, we did get the second highest pass rate over expectation from the Vikings. Not to mention that was the highest they've had so far with JJ McCarthy. So at least trying other things, but we go back to the conversation, just copy paste it from last week, in that we don't believe this offense from McCarthy can support two wide receivers. And so it seems to be funneling through Justin Jefferson. TJ Hawkinson has been droppable for months now. And Addison, I still worry about to start consistently in the fantasy postseason as long as McCarthy's under center. So I think he continues funneling and hopefully carrying Justin Jefferson. But beyond that, I don't have any buy low situation. It's more of a situation to avoid for me.
I mean, Jordan Addison did get 11 targets in that game on 42 attempts. I mean, and I know Jalen Naylor was super productive on his 6 targets. But yeah, I mean, I don't like trying to sell or being lukewarm on really talented guys. And I think Jordan Addison is a really talented guy. Getting 11 targets in a game, getting 20+% of the targets, it's hard. It's hard. I do think that this week, home in the Dome against the Bears is going to be a huge thing for JJ McCarthy. If he cannot succeed here, I'll be super, super worried. If someone dropped Jordan Addison in your league because they're like on tilt, I would be adding him for this spot. Leave him on your bench and just see what happens against the Bears. Sure. And I think that's okay.
I will note too, on our DVP tool, we have a pretty cool filter where you can filter for like the playoff only weeks and strength of schedule there. And in those playoff weeks, we have the Vikings with the best matchups for quarterback and wide receiver in terms of the fantasy points allowed over expectation to those positions. They get Dallas in week 15 there, first week of the fantasy playoffs, and at Giants, which is, kind of heavily leaning into those metrics. But if you can stomach, or if the Vikings can get a rhythm at all by that time, like the Vikings wide receivers and JJ McCarthy himself could be pretty valuable fantasy assets in the playoffs there.
Yeah, and week 17 in the Dome against the Lions isn't like the worst spot ever. They also have a home dome game against the Commanders. They also have this game against the Bears. So, I mean, they have a lot of good spots left, do the Vikings. If they had tougher spots, I would be like, yeah, you know what, man, let's just sell the McCarthy stuff. But given the spots they have, I'm still leaving the light on. All right. Jack, let's go to the Texans rookie situation. So this was an interesting spot. They were trailing this entire game, or for almost the entire game. And in those setups, we have seen Woody Marks play a lot. This was 60 snaps for Woody Marks and 10 for Nick Chubb. Would it have been closer if the game was neutral or if they were leading? Yes. However, there were some signs, I thought, that they actually were committing to Woody Marks. He started the game. They used him around the goal line. And so those were like really good signs. I thought that maybe even in neutral or positive game scripts, Woody will still be the feature back. So we're up to 58 overall now on Woody Marks. Also, we had some movement for Jalen Noel. So, Jack, what do you think about Texans rookies right now?
Yeah, I think this week is going to be super telling for Woody Marks. Like you said, it was ideal game script for him. They were down 17-0, 3 minutes into the second quarter, which is definitely a Woody script as opposed to a Chubb script. But even in scripts like that in the past, we haven't seen Woody play 80% of snaps like he did in week 10. They're now 6.5 point favorites against the Titans. So I think this is a pretty big spot just to see what the split looks like in positive game script. I do think that regardless of how you look at it, it was definitely a pretty big positive for Woody. It's just like figuring out the extent to which that is true. And I think we'll learn more about that this week. But it was a youth movement on the whole for the Texans. Jaden Higgins was second in routes run here. He ran 26. Christian Kirk ran 24. And then Jalen Noel got up to 17 routes. Jalen Noel also out-targeted Kirk 4-3 and was more effective with his targets. So maybe this was like a conscious decision to let's see what the young guys can do. Maybe it was a Davis Mills thing. He's been throwing to them in practice. Let's get them out there more. I think we're going to learn a lot this week against Tennessee, although it is shaping up to be another Mills spot.
Yeah.
But I think that it was definitely a pretty good week for Woody Marks, and then a quietly good week for Nolan Higgins as well.
I mean, it wasn't pretty, but they won the game, right? So they can be like, oh, we played Woody and we played Noel more and we won the game. You know, maybe it's that simple that they'll be like, oh yeah, that was a good idea. Let's keep doing that. I think it's worth being aggressive on Woody Marks here as like the kind of guy that you want to have in fantasy. He got goal line work and he's very good catching the football, So yeah, I think we're probably higher than market on Woody Marks here at 58 overall. And I like that there for sure. Let's go to, the Lions stuff. So I think people are going to say, Mark, that don't you guys see Dan Campbell's the play caller now? You got to have Jameson Williams in the top 20. He's about to go absolutely nuclear. Now, we did move Jameson Williams up 22 spots in the rest of the season, top 150 up to 54 overall. That is a big move through the mid-range there. It's not just because he had a good game. It's because there was an actual change. Dan Campbell called the plays, and he started running crossers and stop routes for Jameson Williams and getting him some targets that he can actually win with. So, yeah, I thought it was worth the change. I could see being even higher on Jameson, but they have so many mouths to feed that I think that's kind of a tough sell. Mark, what do you think about other or more on Jameson impacts of Dan Campbell calling plays?
First, just shout out to us for saying buy low on Jameson Williams the entire year. Finally hit against the Commanders. So we are sharp indeed. But yeah, I mean,
early,
I think wrong. Yeah, exactly. I think it's certainly a great sign for Jameson Williams here. 7 targets is his second most on the season. Then he had a 10-yard ADOT. His ADOT on the season is around 15 yards. So certainly was involved more on those crossers, as you mentioned. And he had 7 targets. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 8. So I think that gap will probably be wider in the weeks as we progress down the road here. But one of the quiet winners, I think, was also David Montgomery. Dan Campbell is like king of the Coach Speak Index right now. He's one of the most entertaining guys to listen to for sure. But he always hypes up David Montgomery. And in this game, it was the second highest snap count and second highest touch count of the season there for David Montgomery. So I think, he was more of a bench stash at this point. And as in previous seasons, you could start him in the flex and feel good about it. And I think you can kind of do that moving forward the rest of the way with David Montgomery as well. So I think he's kind of a sneaky winner in this whole, setup with Dan Campbell, assuming he calls plays for the rest of the season. And then Adam, you've been on it that their final 6 games of the fantasy season are in a dome. So we love that as well. I think it's, great news overall for the Lions, and we can feel great about their setup the rest of the way here. But unfortunately, they won't be able to play the Commanders defense every week.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to overreact because it was against the Commanders, but man, Dan Campbell calling plays, more play action, obviously better route trees, and they have 6 straight dome games. I mean, I hope you're able to buy on Lions. I think my move to make last week was like buy all Lions and sell all Bears or something like that. Yeah. I still like buying Lions.
J-Mo has had a 20% target share in 3 of his last 4 games. Like, it was happening before last week. We just got the extra boost we needed last week as well.
Let's go to the Patriots here, Daigle. This is the toothpaste back in the tube situation that I alluded to earlier. Trevion Henderson has 2 long touchdown runs. Patriots win the game. I don't know that Ramondre is going to play on Thursday, but it sounds like he at least has a chance to. In other words, I'd probably expect him back in week 12, Ramondre, in a worst case scenario here. So the big question that everybody is asking, Daigle, what will happen when Ramondre gets back? Will it go back to Trevion in a bit role, maybe 8 touches or so? Or can he get up towards 12, 13, 14 touches a game, even with Ramondre in there? Daigle, what do you think about Patriots backfield right now?
That's what I personally believe will happen. It's not going to be Trevion becoming Rico Dowdle and just overthrowing Chuba Hubbard entirely, at least my view of it. But I do think Ramondre will get some worthless carries that won't matter so much to Henderson's ceiling, especially since Ramondre has been a chronic fumbler this year. It wasn't just this past week, too. The trend started a couple weeks ago whenever he took on a Browns run defense that doesn't allow anything to anyone, and he averaged 7.5 yards per carry, Henderson did, in that spot, and followed it up with 18 touches after afterwards. So I do think against the Jets in the short term on Thursday, we get another tremendous game from Henderson. The Jets defense literally dead last in EPA per carry without Quinnen Williams, who they traded at the deadline, on the field this year. And I think that's going to be the extra boost we need to continue drowning out Stevenson rest of season.
So Travion did get, I think it was 2 goal line carries in this game on Sunday and failed to convert both. And so if the coaches are watching the tape, they're like, you know what? We like Travion, but we needed Ramondre or we needed Terrell Jennings in for those snaps. So I do not think that Travion, when everybody's healthy, will get the pure goal line stuff. I do think the toothpaste is out of the tube in that you can't just give this guy a bit roll, like in favor of Ramondre Stevenson and Terrell Jennings. Like, he needs to touch the ball 10, 12, 15 times a game. And I think it'll probably push more towards that 12 to 15 number, even once Ramondre gets back here. Last one before we get to listener questions here. Jack, people are angry with Bijan Robinson. I mean, God, there's been so many landmines this year. I can't really imagine being frustrated with Bijan Robinson. But over the last few weeks, we have to admit that Tyler Algier has stolen a bunch of the touchdowns from Bijan Robinson. That is clearly a conscious choice by them. When they get around the goal line, they prefer Tyler Algier. We still have Bijan Robinson at 5 overall. I think some people, a few of these people, I don't think it's the majority of people that are angry with their Bijan play, but some people are going to be like, he doesn't get the goal line carries. How can he be 5 overall in the top 150? So, Jack, what do you think about the Algier-Bijan dynamic right now in Atlanta?
Yeah, they've started playing both of them on the field at the same time a bunch. This past week, they combined for 77 snaps, even though the Falcons only ran 63 plays. So they're using Bijan a little bit as a wide receiver almost, but the goal line stuff is definitely a little concerning. Algier has 13 carries inside the 10. On the season, Bijan has 5 inside the 5-yard line. It's 3-1 in favor of Algier. So I mean, I think it's a fair concern with Bijan, but I don't really know what you're going to do with that. I don't really think you can sell Bijan. He's clearly still a high-end RB1, even with Algier taking so much of the red zone stuff. So I kind of think it's a little frustrating if you have Bijan, but there's not really anything to do off of it.
I mean, how many guys in the NFL can go catch 8 balls in a game and also go run for 70-yard touchdown? You know, there's very, very, very few. And Bijan, and also, you know, touch the ball 20, 25 times in a game. There's very few guys that can do all 3 of those things. Achane, McCaffrey, Gibbs, Bijan come to mind, like the best running backs to have in fantasy. So I know I said it yesterday on Team by Team, but if anyone out there is selling Bijan Robinson, I'm a buyer. I'm a buyer on Bijan. All right. Appreciate everyone who sent in questions. Let's get to a few of these. Mark, we'll start with this one. PFF commenter says, what do we do with Xavier Worthy? Haven't started him for weeks. Any chance he catches fire down the stretch like last year, or drop him as a grenade for some other manager to deal with? Yes. I love this new season-long bro strategy, dropping someone as a grenade. Yeah, we talked about Worthy a few times on here. I kind of felt like it was similar to the JMO thing where he needs a route tree change to have consistency. Doesn't mean he can't pop up for a big game, but he needs a route tree change to have consistency. Mark, what do you think about Xavier Worthy rest of season? We're still at 78 overall here.
I'm certainly a bit conflicted on Worthy just because I do think Rashee Rice is the clear wide receiver 1 there. And then there are a lot of other talented receivers and playmakers in this Chiefs offense still. But I lean hold Worthy at this point. You know, in the game against the Bills, he led the team with an 84% route share and was second with a 21% target share. Did not convert many of those targets into catches, but I do think Worthy is still has fantasy value, and I wouldn't necessarily want to drop him and let another team pick him up and start him. You know, there's always outs too. If Rashee Rice got hurt again, Kelsey went down. You know, there's other ways for the Worthy volume to get even more solidified down the stretch here too. So given he's a second-year wide receiver, you know, attached to Patrick Mahomes, I'm not in the camp of dropping him. You know, they still have a matchup against Dallas left, a couple tough matchups too, but I think for the most part, Worthy is a hold for me.
There's not many receivers that you think like this guy could actually lead the week in receiving yards this week. And we look at this all the time in props, and Worthy always pops for us versus market because of the style of his game. Like the Sims can pick up on the style of his game can lead to these huge outlier games. Do I think it's likely one is going to happen here down the stretch? No, but he can definitely still get 30. Like his ceiling is different than a lot of these other guys that you'll find here in the wide receiver 3/4 range.
I think the best point Mark made is that you don't want to drop someone who we should be treating like a contingency running back to where a starter goes down and suddenly we go back into the same exact situation we were in last year where everyone wanted to start Xavier Worthy down the stretch. Those guys you definitely hold regardless of if you're starting.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. All right, Daigle. Steed90 says, Jaden Reed is on a couple of waiver wires. With the Packers offense inept right now, do we think he gets a role right away? So Jaden Reed's return date, I think, should be coming relatively soon. I haven't heard any updates, but he's getting towards the timeline that he was supposed to be back. Daigle, what do you think about adding Jaden Reed off of waivers right now?
I don't want to steal someone's thunder at the end of the show, so I'll keep it short. But yes, you can totally add him. The real caveat here, because normally I would say we don't know about the timeline. You definitely would not start Jaden Reed in the fantasy playoffs in his first game back, since you also don't know his ramp-up situation for a team and coaching staff that has historically brought everyone back slowly. Christian Watson was an outlier this year. But beyond that, the real key here is that without Tucker Kraft, they actually could use Jaden Reed a lot more than normal. They could even shift from the typical 2 wide receiver sets and force him onto the field just because they need playmakers immediately. So I definitely do not mind adding Jaden Reed. Hopefully you have an IR slot, but otherwise, sure.
Yeah, I mean, very, very good NFL wide receiver on waivers who might be back soon. I wouldn't overthink that. I like adding him there also. Holden says, what is the bull case for Tedero McMillan at this point? Top 20 wide receiver seems really high for a guy on a team determined not to throw. So we're at wide receiver 26 on Tedero McMillan here, 52 overall. I get what Holden is saying. Even when the Panthers are losing, they're still trying to run the football. This team is dedicated to the run in outrageous fashion. I still think Tedero McMillan has had a nice rookie season. Bryce is just so bad, and they try to hide him by running the ball on every play and throwing short. So systemically, it does not look good for Tedero McMillan right now, but still a talented guy. Wide receiver 26, 52 overall. It's not like we're that excited about him. Jack, what do you think about T-Mac's bull case at this point?
Yeah, I think it's definitely fair to be concerned about the pass rate over expectation in Carolina. They do just run the ball so much. I mean, they were trailing all game Sunday pretty much, and they still just ran the ball every play. But Holden asked for the bull case, and so I'll give it. In the Panthers' last 4 games, they get the Rams, Saints, Bucs, and Seahawks. The Saints game, they should not be a negative game script against the Rams, Bucs, and Seahawks. They most likely will. And McMillan really has condensed the targets over the past 3 games. He's at 42%, 30%, and 32% target shares. So if they have to throw, he could be in for pretty voluminous outings.
Yeah, and if they get volume and they get like even sub-average, slightly sub-average quarterback play, I think T-Mac can have some huge games. It's just I'm skeptical that they can get into those spots. So yeah, it's not great right now for T-Mac. Jay Flabella says, what about James Cook? Hold or sell? So it sounds like Jay Flabella has James Cook. We're at 14 overall here on Mr. Cook. He has had a string of underwhelming games, which I'm sure has some people panicked. Mark, what do you think about James Cook right now?
I think people might be interested in selling too, just because looking at their fantasy playoff schedule, they get the Patriots, Browns, and Eagles, who have all been really tough on opposing running backs so far this season. And James Cook has been kind of, relegated to just a rushing only role. I mean, his target share this year for the Bills has been extremely lacking. So I guess I could potentially see getting out from under him if you really wanted to. I would lean hold just given James Cook's talent and where this Bills offense is going. Their only success on offense has come when they've been able to establish the run and pound the rock consistently in games. James Cook has really consolidated the running back touches there and rush attempts. So I'd rather bet on the talent of James Cook and keep him in a fantasy environment where top end running backs are just so hard to come by. So I would lean hold here.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to sell, I wouldn't be selling him for less than what we have him for. We have him 14th overall. So, I mean, if you go to the trade calculator or the overall rankings, you can see the players we have around him. I'm not sure that you would be getting those players for James Cook. So, yeah, I mean, we have him 14 overall, right around Achane, Barkley, Henry, Bowers, London, Egbuka. If you could get one of those guys for him, I'm for it, but I wouldn't want to be selling cheap on James Cook right now either. All right, Jack, if you want to go to the trade calculator here, we got a couple of trade questions to wrap up. Statletic says, I'm 9-1. My starting running backs are Genty and Harvey. Oh, sounds like a rookie Slappy here. He's got Genty and Harvey. He says, should I trade Genty and Devonta Smith for Bijan? Genty and Devonta Smith for Bijan Robinson. He already has JSN, Puka, Devonta, Diggs, Franklin, Shaheed, and Jennings. This seems like a slam dunk. Give me the Bijan side, Daigle, unless I'm missing something. What do you think, Daigle?
No, I agree with you. Just because Devonta Smith, as great as he's been, and it seems like he's closed the margin significantly to A.J. Brown over the last month, and they're left 4 games together, you wouldn't start him over JSN or Puka at any point. So Devonta Smith is kind of just a backup for this team. So you don't mind separating with him whatsoever.
And I think Genty can have a good game this week against the Cowboys, but then Browns at Chargers, Broncos at Eagles at Texans. It's going to be over for Genty after this game against the Cowboys. So I love this trade for whoever is getting Bijan by a massive margin there for me. Last trade here, Jack says, would you do Rico Dowdle for Woody Marks and Stephon Diggs? He says, my wide receivers are disaster. Rico Dowdle for Woody Marks and Steph Diggs. We have that pretty close here in the calculator.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how disastrous your wide receivers are. Like if you're really hurting a wide receiver and Diggs is your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, let's say, I kind of think you might have to, and the trade calculator leans that way in a vacuum. So if it makes sense from a team needs perspective, it's definitely unfortunate to have to part with Rico. But if it fits the team needs, I think it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Daigle.
Woody Marks's like ceiling outcome, since we're trying to project for him still, he's not settled at all, is matching, if not beating out Rico Dowdle rest of season.
Yeah. And it's full PPR, which I think is better for Woody Marks here. Also, our trade calculator is indeed half PPR. He also mentioned a Marv trade in here. I just wanted to note for anyone that uses this show for news, Marvin Harrison did have an appendectomy, I believe, and is going to be out this week. All right. Let's get to the moment everyone has been waiting for. Our moves to make. Why don't we give Jack the floor first? This time, Jack, if you are ready with your first move to make ahead of week 11.
Yeah, I'm going to go with buy Aaron Jones. I know that the JJ McCarthy stuff is scary, but Jones has really emerged as a workhorse. He played 71% of snaps, outcarried Jordan Mason 9-4, 30 routes on 47 dropbacks, and PFF's Nathan Yonke noted that before Jones got hurt in week 9, he was out snapping Jordan Mason 24-8. So I definitely think it's fair to have systemic concerns about the Minnesota offense, but I think it's going a little under the radar that Jones is pretty much emerging as a workhorse for the Vikings, and so I like buying him low.
Agreed. I thought 2 weeks ago, Aaron Jones played a great game. He banged up his shoulder. Last week, on Sunday, he had to play a Ravens defense, which is much, much, much improved. The role for Aaron Jones, underlying role for Aaron Jones looks awesome right now. Daigle, go ahead with your first move to make.
We have talked about all year about buying ceilings for pennies, and that led us to Travis Hunter before his breakout. That led us to Travion Henderson a month ago, just because everyone was trying to drop him, so you could acquire him for a handful of fab, and look at where he is now. I think that's Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt as well. No one wants this guy. The rumors are all that Chris Rodriguez is going to lead this team in carries, and that could be true. But rest of season, we're still projecting for the fantasy playoffs against the Giants, Eagles, and Cowboys, and I still want to, again, bet on ceiling for pennies. So I'm acquiring Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt for nothing, understanding that it could be a big L, but it doesn't matter because his manager doesn't want him right now. So I like trading for him.
Interesting one. That one had not crossed my mind, Daigle, but yeah, that's an interesting one for sure. I think that if Chris Rodriguez didn't get hurt in that game, I do think it was going to be all Chris Rodriguez. I think Chris Rodriguez's shoulder turned out to be okay. We need to double check on that. But if you're projecting towards the end of the season, which is what Daigle is talking about, maybe they just give up and be like, let's see what we have with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and give him a bunch of work down the stretch. Could be with Marcus Mariota, though. Mark, your first move to make.
I'll go with add Jayden Reed here. So yes, to that question earlier, I think Jayden Reed is a great add right now. The Packers had the 6th best wide receiver schedule the rest of the season according to our DVP metrics. The Packers right now are just desperate for playmakers with Tucker Kraft out for the season, and Jayden Reed is easily their best yards after catch guy remaining in this offense. We've seen him perform on limited volume in previous seasons, so it's not like he needs to come out and earn 8, 9, or 10 targets to contribute to your fantasy lineup. So I think Jayden Reed is a great add right now. Obviously, there is uncertainty around his injury, and that's the main downside here. But I think for the stretch run, Jayden Reed is as a high of an upside add as you can get off the waiver wire right now.
All right, add Jayden Reed. For my first move to make, I am going to go, well, I was going to do sell Deebo Samuel. And then everybody got on me and said, you can't sell Deebo for anything. So you know what? Screw it, man. I'm going to go drop Deebo Samuel. I am not in the season-long streets too much, but I have heard of this strategy that we alluded to earlier, someone alluded to earlier, called the sabotage drop. And I guess the idea is you drop someone perceived to have value when in fact, all they do is clog up your roster. And if you play against them, you're not scared. That's how I feel about Deebo. Jaden Daniels might be done. Their bye week still hasn't happened. Terry McLaurin is probably coming back after the bye. They still have to play the Broncos, at Vikings, and Eagles this season. Deebo has always relied on this outlier, ridiculous efficiency and yak ability. Well, that's eroding as he gets old and fat, and he's not with Kyle Shanahan anymore. Deebo Samuel yards after catch per reception is down to 5.2. It was never lower than 8.2 when he was with San Francisco, peaked at 12.2 way back in 2020. So I regret to inform the Deebo freaks out there, of which I've battled for many, many years, that I think it's officially Jover for Mr. Deebo. Jack, your second move to make here ahead of week 11.
Yeah, this one's more for deeper leagues, but I'm going to say add Jalen Noel. They pretty much crushed his role in week 9 when Christian Kirk came back, and then 1 week later, they went back to him. He was only 7 routes behind Christian Kirk on the season. Noel is averaging 8.1 yards per target. Kirk is at 5.1. We saw the Texans move a little bit toward the rookies so far, or in week 10, and so far, Noel has been more productive than Jaden Higgins. He's flashed more, I think. So I like adding Jalen Noel. I don't mind adding Higgins either if you're in a deeper league, and just seeing if the Texans continue to go with the youth movement at wide receiver.
Yeah, like I said, they won the game. Jalen Noel has been performing. I like it. Daigle, your second move to make.
Lamar Jackson recently struggled against Brian Flores and that Vikings defense, but the Ravens still reached the red zone 5 times. They just ended up kicking 4 field goals. And so I am looking to either, you can shop around, you can try to get Lamar Jackson right now, but if you are unable to do so, I do think it's fine waiting for Monday after a tougher matchup, at least on paper, against the Browns defense, because all we're doing is trying to get Lamar Jackson for the rest of the season beyond this game, whenever they go on to face the Jets, Bengals, Steelers, and Bengals. Yeah. Not to mention, in the postseason, Patriots and Packers. We've mentioned adding the Ravens in the past, but I do think it's a chance where Lamar could struggle again. We set a notification for Monday and then swoop in before the trade deadline and add him then.
Yeah, I actually thought about doing buy Zay Flowers for my move. It's not complicated. He gets to play the Bengals twice, and there's only a few games left in the regular season. It's like he gets to play the Bengals twice. Give me Zay Flowers if somebody wants to sell him. That's all. All right. And Lamar and Derrick Henry also. All right. Mark, your second and final move to make.
I'm going to go with buy Wan'Dale Robinson. So as I alluded to at the top, we get a Jameis Winston start this week, and Jameis is pretty much a wide receiver kingmaker at this point. Look at what he did down the stretch last year with Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. I think Wan'Dale Robinson could be in store for that as well. Obviously, Jackson Dart not necessarily out long-term with that concussion issue, but we've repeatedly seen himself put him in harm's way. So I think, we could get some more Jameis starts down the stretch here. And since Malik Neighbors went down, Wan'Dale Robinson has a 27% target share for the Giants. And while, he's typically like a PPR merchant, Wan'Dale Robinson has the highest ADOT of his career by over 2 yards this season. So some more downfield targets mixed in. And then the Giants have the league's third best wide receiver schedule in the fantasy playoffs, according to our DVP. They get the Commanders, Vikings, and Raiders, which all funnel targets to slot receivers as well. So I think Wan'Dale is an interesting buy right now. Mostly a PPR suggestion still, but I still think viable in half PPR and just not a very sexy name to go after right now, but I think will provide solid fantasy value down the stretch.
Yes. If you would like 8 catches for 17 yards, Wan'Dale Robinson is indeed your man down the stretch. By the way, Darius Slayton, and I saw this and they were like, oh, it's no big deal. I cannot stay healthy, man. Hamstring again. And the only reason I'm tilting that is because I had so many backdoor Dart, Theo Johnson, Slayton stacks in best ball. I was like, man, what am I going to do here? It's round 18. Let me get the Giants triple backdoor. How bad can it be? Darius Slayton, like everything ran out perfect for that. And Darius Slayton just can't keep his hamstring healthy, which is frustrating.
He's got to be the unluckiest person in the league. Like, he is this close to 100 yards and a touchdown every single game, and then something happens. A phantom OPI, a hamstring injury where he leaves late. He always leads the team in receiving yards, but then something happens in the second half.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. All right. My second move to make is going to be sell Breece Hall. Breece Hall went off for 124 total yards and a touchdown on Sunday. I like using that to try to get out from under Breece. How many points is this Jets team, which generated just 8 first downs against the Browns last week? How many points are the Jets going to score in upcoming games at New England, at Baltimore, especially without Garrett Wilson to help generate some more first downs and some more plays? So I think Breece, given the contract situation, if he picks up any kind of small injury, he's going to sit out. It's so scary to hold Breece, I think, right now. And so if you can get out from under him off of this game, I like that there as well. All right. Again, we'll be back next week for our preparing for the playoffs special. That is going to be the final show of this format for this season. Appreciate everyone who has tuned in to all of these rest of season top 150 shows. We put a lot of work into the rankings, especially Mark and Jack and Daigle working on this stuff at all hours of the night. So be sure to thank them for all the work on the trade calculator and the rest of season top 150 all year. For Dank, for Daigle, for Jack, producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.